Welcome to Timberborn and the settlement of the Thornbreakers, where I've been conquering the very difficult map of Timberpunk 2. At this point, we are getting into the late game. The colony is secure, and I've been switching to just building more and more elaborate constructions. Over the last couple episodes, I built the vault, this hidden cave of water where the beavers are protecting the water, and I've been building elaborate structures to gather water all over the map and deliver it to the vault. Going into this episode, I'm looking at ways of expanding that water storage and starting to use it in different ways. As we start this episode, we are half a day to a bad tide starting, and I just realized we're on the brink of a miniature disaster. You see, last episode, I was busy connecting all these new sources of water on the map, and most of them are drills, so they're just gonna stop working when a bad tide happens. But not all of them. You see, if I follow this river all the way up here, this is connected to a natural source of water, which means this is going to be giving out bad water in just half a day. And I never built a diversion system. This is going to start polluting all of our water, including the basin. Now, luckily, we do have quite a lot of water stored at this point, so it will probably be diluted. But I think it is very important that we get here and maybe dump this off the edge of the map as quickly as we can. This is the highest priority thing the beavers could be working on right now. Luckily, all our builders are bots, so they should be okay working here. And I think what we could do is we're going to dynamite this so the water will just be pushed off the edge of the map in the other direction. I like the fact that with bots, they're working overnight. Okay, there we go. Let's detonate this one, and we'll detonate this one. Perfect. I already see that water draining in the opposite direction, and these are high enough. What I'm going to do is build a miniature diversion system over here, just to push bad water off the edge of the map. That'll work for now. This is probably one of the simplest diversion systems you could make. All I've got is a contamination sensor here, which this is the first time I've used the contamination sensor all game, and I've set up two different floodgates. These ones are going to let stuff off the edge, and these ones are going to close when it's contaminated. Nice, compact, simple. We'll let this evaporate over the 24 days of this drought. Okay, let's go take a look to see how the rest of the colony is doing during this bad tide. Ideally, this is a non-event. Well, I can see we've got a little bit of contamination here. I think this is the result of that pipe down here. That's unfortunate, because I'm not sure the best way to actually make irrigation barriers for that. We'll see if just aligning it like that will work, because otherwise I need to start building things into the cliff, which is very awkward. Oh, this is unfortunate. I forgot good water seeps will also let out bad water. So you can see we've got a little bit of contamination getting into our vault. Thankfully, this is a very large vault, so it's not awful, but we should add a little sensor here as well to regulate the flow of water going out. Now, as I look at this basic contamination system, there is a downside with this approach. See, especially now that this is contaminated, when the good season comes back, this is basically going to be just bad water. And that's going to prevent this water seep from producing good water until this gets below a certain height. And at that point, I'm more or less just waiting for the effects of evaporation to get the pollution level down, that this will open up the gates again. Not great. Another way I could potentially handle this is I could just drop this off into the abyss. I could build like a tunnel under here or drain it that direction. Say, drain it in here because I'm not using this. You know, I want to try something with automation. What I would like to do is basically have a pump here that will just pump out bad water during the good season. So if it says, hey, the good season has come back and this is contaminated, we are going to start pumping up. We'll make it a high priority job to get the bad water out there, and that should trigger the gates to open again. I'm going to use a contamination sensor, and I'm going to combine that with a relay that's going to end with the type of season it is. And then I'll hook that up into a bad water pump. And I'll line this whole thing up with contamination barriers. Something like this. So you can see I've got the seep here. It is looking at contamination. This relay combines that signal with good weather, and that's hooked up to the bad water pump. Now, because we have some contamination here, which I am not happy about, I'm also going to just temporarily put some pumps here, I think, to help get some of that contamination out. These guys will just be temporary. We'll eventually get rid of these. Now, the downside with this approach is we're going to run into a problem if we ever create a backlog of bad water. For example, if we just were so full of bad water that we don't need to pump, this guy isn't going to be able to pump very much because he won't be able to put it anywhere. Generally, that hasn't been a problem for us because we've been using a lot of TNT, and that uses a lot of extract, and that's using our centrifuges. But when we're not doing big efforts like that, it could be. That makes me wonder, this episode, we might want to invest in something like a grease factory. That's a permanent sink of our extract and therefore our bad water to make grease for the bots, which they're going to eat all the time. That would mean that we're constantly going to need bad water coming in, and it's not going to stagnate. Now, as I was working on this, I did notice that we are still getting overflowing up here. And you can see that with the water, for example, coming out here. Now, that's because our vault, I think, is misconfigured. You can see right now it's sucking up all this water down from the basin. And it's just going up to the top here and being dumped off the edge of the map. And that's resulting in us slowly draining this. Now, this will not happen forever, because the vault is like a pump and dump system. Whenever this gets too high, it will drain it, and whenever it gets too low, it should add to it. The catch is this has been configured to push water or absorb water from this over time. So I think in order to avoid this waste, we're going to have to switch it up a bit. To begin with, we are going to do a little bit of cleaning and delete some of our automation that we are not really using that much anymore. The only things we care about are these, which control the vault. These two are the high and low. And what we do for dumping, for example, is we say that we're only going to dump when it's a bad season. And I think we're going to use a similar setup for pumping. What I want it to do is, during the good season, pump at full blast. Don't even worry about it. Outside of good season, only pump when it gets too high. And under all these circumstances, you should only be pumping as long as there is space available up top. As you can see, this is what it will look like from a logic diagram. So I'm going to try to set up what you've seen in the chart here. Okay, I think this will do the trick. We've got our high sensor, our low sensor, and then we only fill the river when its weather is bad. And we want to pump the river when the river is high or the weather is good. And we combine all of this. We will only pump the river if we want to, and there is space in the vault to accommodate it. And then we're just going to go through here, and then we will copy paste that setting. And I know I'm not going to remember what these are. I'm going to add some symbols that I've created to a couple of them. That way at a glance, we can know what's going on. Really, I don't use the banners as much as I should. They're pretty handy. Okay, our immediate disasters have all been mitigated at this point. We have our bad water diversion system over here, our seep is no longer polluting our water, and our vault should no longer be dumping a bunch of stuff off the edge of the map needlessly. Now to address the next big problem we've got brewing. I've been very fast and loose with our power use in this game, and that's thanks to our giant power plant. But with all these new pumps that I've got hooked up, well, during the good season, we are over capacity. In fact, we're getting up to 40K power usage. So I think it is time to revisit our power plant now and start upgrading it. And that is something that I have started the process of in the last couple episodes. I want a nice, clean, empty space to work with, so I'm starting to disconnect it from that river over here. So we're going to start by continuing that and filling in everything so we have an empty canvas to work with. You can also stop this bad water over here. And one thing that unfortunately might cause us problems is the Timberpunk logo over on the side here, because I might need to trench this deeper to get water off the edge of the map, and it's going to make it tough to dynamite some of that space out. So we are going to send a Crack Force team of sapper beavers down to the bottom of the map, and we're just going to run through there and tear all of that out. We'll plan on a little staircase going all the way down here and then turning around and working that way. Let's give them a little bit of time to get all of that done then. Fortunately, I think it's going to take way too long to get this logo removed. I would like to have power restored fully before we get out of this bad tide, so we're going to continue working on this in the background. And for now, I'm just going to do something for the power plant to keep us going. So the reason really I'm looking at making this deeper has to do with this. If you take a look at the water wheels here, you can see that the faster water moves, the faster it loses height. If I have a very narrow channel, it's going to be moving faster and this height is going to be going down faster, which means as I make this channel longer, I'm going to have to start digging into the ground to make sure that these things still touch. And that's where we'd start to touch these ruins. I think we can get away with it for now, though. These guys are going to continue to work in the background, and by the time it becomes a problem, hopefully we're far enough. But I think what we're going to do now is start changing things around for this power plant. We have enough stuff stockpiled, so I'm going to temporarily turn this stuff off. We're going to deal with a power shortage for a little bit. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm concerned that I'm going to end up with our regular beavers coming in here and trying to pick up the debris. And I do not want them to get infected. Now, one change I'm going to do while I'm looking at this is I would like to start using those impermeable power shafts. Now, what I'm curious about with these is if I could transfer power to this on top. And the answer is no. So what I was hoping to do with this is if I could run, say, a row of these and have them transfer their power below. But it looks like this only transfers power horizontally. So that's unfortunate. Instead, what I'm going to do is stack these this way. So one of these, it looks like it does connect with the other one. As long as the one at the very end is connected to the power system, I can just daisy chain them all the way down. What I'm going to do then is start filling in some of this space. My idea is I'm going to run a line here, turn around, and come back down initially. And then once we manage to get all of this out, we could potentially add another run over here to the left, which means we're going to have to start filling in all of this. This shape is annoying enough that I'm going to create some scaffolding over here, just to speed up dynamiting and filling things in. And again, I'm hoping that we have enough stockpiled here because I would hate to run out mid-construction effort, because this really is the majority of our power system right here. So that should also force me to keep some of what I'm doing a little bit tempered. I don't want to get too carried away here. That takes care of most of the dynamite work. Now, you can probably guess what happened. You see, I cut the power without recalling that half our population requires power to run. That's right, we have bots, right? Bots are half our population, and they cannot charge without power. All our bots have distributed themselves all the way across our industry and tried to take every charging station that's available. Of course, there is very, very little charging available because we only have a couple of geothermal vents powering everything. So you can see a few regular beavers got roped into providing a little bit of power, and I also went to all our builder huts and switched them temporarily back to good old-fashioned beaver power. We had a stockpile of about 50 of them that were unemployed, so they got all sent to building duty. But that does temper some of the things I can do here. For example, you notice that I didn't continue filling this with the dirt because we ran out of dirt. I think we have enough now, though, that we could start reconstructing or re-adding power again. Now, I think I've left enough space here that I could add another zig to this pattern going in this direction. But what I'd like to do is something like this, and then stack these together like so. So we had two before. This should triple the amount of power that we're getting. And then we do have a clear path of how to extend it. I'm guessing that given the amount of power going through here, we're going to have to dig some of these down. So we won't know for sure until we get everything started. So let's get this started, and ideally we're going to get our power back. I could turn on the power right now, but I'm a little cautious with overflowing and all our regular beavers present. Now, as for how we're doing down below, well, you can see that I am slowly eating away at the letters here. This is a pretty slow process, but I'm just working our way across. And you can see now why I didn't want to wait for this to be completed before I started construction. It's just too slow. Thankfully, we've got all the supplies for these wheels, so we should be able to speed run this pretty quick. Okay, let's go ahead and get this started. So I've waited until night. I've paused all the nearby buildings. I don't want any of the regular beavers getting contaminated. And I've got these floodgates nearby that I can open up. So let's see what's going to happen. Okay, we've got some bad water coming out now. Looking okay, looking okay. And, oh, okay, we're getting a lot more flooding than I was expecting. I would expect this to normalize soon, but I'm still seeing more and more. Okay, I'm going to continue to open up our floodgates in the back just to let more and more water out. Yeah, because this is It doesn't look like it's expanding now that I've lowered those floodgates. So hopefully this gets better before the morning hits. That looks a little bit better thanks to our floodgates here. We did get some contamination. In fact, this looks a nice shade of purple, probably due to some of the infection earlier because of our water seep. But this certainly isn't going to help. I think in order to do this safer, what I should have done is left these open and just close them bit by bit to see where the breaking point is. So we're going to do that now. We're just going to slowly increase these and see how high we can go until we start getting flooding. Because what should happen is we should go a little bit higher. We should get more of these wheels online. And then we're going to see where we're going to have to dynamite down to make a little bit more room. By working very, very slowly and closing these, I got all of them up for except a couple at 0.295 height. That's pretty good. And with that, we now have everything operational. And the last one, it just barely hits that water. I'll take it, that will count. Yeah, you can see that height difference. I think if I wanted to get this going completely, I would have to account for a little bit more height difference. I think I would have to dynamite into the name here. You can also see the impact of narrowing the channel here. So the ones on the left that are getting everything, they're at about 13K, give or take. But this one, because he is in the middle of the river, he's about 5,000, and this guy is close to 13K too, which is interesting. As you can see, he is half in the wide river and half in the narrow river. So I'm wondering what place it samples the CMS to get power calculation. But at least for colony planning, this should triple the amount of power that we're taking. You can see right now we're at 80K power, which not too shabby for just 6 water wheels. Like if you compare this to the power plant I built for the Evergreen, I took up like 1/8 of the map and I was producing 80K. And I've got just this little tiny footprint and that's 80K power. Yeah, I am very pleased with that. I'm tempted for a future episode just to make like a power plant episode to see how far I can push this. But for that, we should definitely clean up this. So I'll keep that work going on in the background. For now though, we've got 8 days left in this bad tide. Let's go solve some other problems. One of the big things that I've been wanting to do still is finish building out our basin. Looks a little mixed up right now. My long-term goal again was to create this X pattern in the middle for the basin. And unfortunately, a lot of our original district and town is sitting right there, including our main pumping area. To continue this work, I think one of the next steps is going to be to get rid of or move our pumping station. I want to get that out of the center of the basin so I can continue the river. So we need to figure out where that's going to be. I like the idea of hiding the water somehow. Just like we hid the vault, right? Our vault over here, you can't really tell that it's here unless you know where to look. And I think having the pumps, as well as like this massive storage of these large tanks, would be really cool. So where could we potentially hide our water? Well, one potential choice is right next to the vault. We could dig in here, maybe make some collection. This area is also potentially promising. Unlike the other sides where there's a lot of shadows to deal with, this is pretty open. We could dig the river in this direction and then just have the pumps all through here. Over here, I think I would like to reserve this for more of our industry, so I don't think I'm going to put the pumps down here. Of them, I like the idea of reclaiming that tunnel system to the left. I know it's going to leave more water up in the air, but it has way more room to work with. I feel like if I put it over here, I'm going to infringe on my expansion of the vault. If I put it down in here, I'm going to get in the way of the mangrove production. So over here it is. We're going to figure out some way to build storage over here. Something we can start with though is planning on trenching the new river in this direction. The hardest part is dealing with this area because, well, it is still in use. Maybe we can build tunnels under it in the meantime. Then once we've got everything moved, we can just get rid of these tunnels. Yeah, that will have to do for now. And I'm pretty sure we can get access to build all of this from underneath. There goes the water to this branch of the river. And now the hard part. We got to figure out how to actually build this pumping station in here. We still have a little bit of space in here that we need to dig away with tunnels. But I figure we don't need, I don't know, a massive pool of water in here. Want to do is something like I did over in the Skyborn. This was a few series ago, but what I configured at that point was a way of stacking a bunch of these together. So for example, if we had something like this, an overhang, and we had another pump that was mirrored, it could get two of them vertically. This happens to be the exact same height that would allow us to stack these guys, the storage. So I could potentially make a two-story complex inside the cave here with a big run of these guys, all facing the same underground river and pumping away from it. So if that's what we're going to do, we need to start digging to make some space. So if we're going to pull this off, maybe the most efficient way would be to go up to the roof here. And then once I've got the target height that I want, then I could start using regular dynamite to dig down. I think digging up is one of the trickiest parts of dealing with 3D terrain. So we'll start with that. I think we can get something working there. I'm also going to create a blueprint over here just so I can gauge how big I need this thing. This is roughly what I want to build, but underground. So looking at the width here, it looks like we need to dig 6 spaces outward from the river, as well as 6 spaces up. And this is getting tall enough and wide enough that will probably cause some cave-ins in there. I think that's okay. I don't think we're anywhere close to the top of the basin. I don't think this is going to cause trouble for our industry up there. But this will be a very big space once we clear it out. Then as for these, I think we could vary this up a bit. For example, if I left some space in here, we could eventually dig into the mountain in both other opposite directions and just keep stockpiling more and more of this water. Then as for how to get quick access to these jobs, I think we're going to have to account for some form of quick tubeway access down at the beginning of the river. And we can stack this on both sides. So we can create another one up here for another layer. And then of course we could fit a tubeway station somewhere up in here to get access to the second story. Okay, I think this plan is going to work. Now we just need to go in that tunnel and dig out a bunch of space to make it happen. So I've started to dig upward this staircase, and we know that we need to go 6 high. So I've got 3 steps right here. This should be the 4th, the 5th, and this should be the 6th floor. So we know that the river is going to be here in the center. And from here, we know that we need to go 6 in either direction. So this is the space we're going to hollow out. Now, I figure what's going to happen is after we get rid of this, we're going to destroy the support beams, and that should cause some of the roof to collapse. But I think that's going to be okay, because look at how much space we've got up here. Until we get up here, we don't need to worry about any collapse. We'll be careful when I do delete it, but I think we'll be okay. Let's go ahead and get the beavers over here and starting to tear it out. This is pretty intensive work, so I'll make sure I cart in all the supplies to make it go a little bit faster too. Well, that used up most of the remainder of this bad tide. But before we go back and take a look at our diversion systems, let's go ahead and get rid of these supports. I want to see what we're going to lose. Well, we'll get back 1,000 planks, that's fine, and it looks like just this little segment of the roof. I really wish it would let me move the camera so I could see exactly what height this was at, but that's not bad at all. It'll just give a slight arch to the roof. Oh well. Okay, a little bit slightly bigger arch than I was expecting. That's because this was too height. So yeah, I really wish it did allow me to see exactly what I was deleting earlier. But that's fine. Let's take a look with our 3D camera to see the space that we've created. Not bad. A little arch here, and I think this looks down to our additional cave system there. So while they are cleaning that up, we're ready to start digging downward. And that's going to look like a first round of triple dynamite all the way down. Now, taking a look over at this mock-up, you'll notice what we need to do is we need these overhangs. And if we're digging this right, this should be 3 height down, and then you notice we'll need to have some hole in the wall to make room for this. After we dynamite 3 down, we'll have just the right height that we could dig around the edges of the wall to make room for that. But first, let's go check on our diversion systems. Well, I do see that this let stuff out. I think it was a little bit premature. It did seem to dump a lot of bad water in there. You know, I think I've had these misconfigured the whole time. I think I've been slowly leaking out bad water all season. Yeah, I think I both hooked them up to the wrong signal and I had them reversed. So this should be correct. When things are bad, it should be closed, and when it's not bad, it should be open. Yes, I've been leaking in contaminated water for a while, I think. Well, ideally, we've got enough coming in that will be diluted. How about our other source of water over here? Well, that's looking fine. I do see it starting to flow, and it's working just fine. In fact, I see it starting to fill in these rivers as well. Great. The other thing we should take a look at is the vault pumping situation. So if we take a look at our lights, the up arrow is turned on, so it should be going at full blast. And this is the first season where we actually have enough power to run it all. Well, look at that. We can't even use everything yet because we don't have enough water to pump. But the ones that can run are running at full capacity, and we have more than enough power to keep that going. I imagine that's going to change as more and more water from the other sources starts to arrive. Especially as the good season goes on, these water sources start moving faster and faster, so we might actually see it get up to the second row. The trade-off with all of this is we're actually pushing water into the lake instead of from the lake only on the first day of the good season. So we're going to fill these lakes up very easily. So for example, you see the water right here, it's being pushed in this direction. So in the not too distant future, we should also look at extending some of our water storage. I've been thinking of maybe a silo or something up here would look pretty cool. Well, that all taken care of, let's get back to our new pumping station over here. Our first round of TNT is just about ready. That actually starts looking into the tunnel underneath. Well, that makes our job a little bit easier because I don't think we need this giant staircase anymore. We can decommission it, and we're going to instead get access this way. Now, as I said earlier, what we're going to do is go to the edges here with the intent of installing our overhangs. Because I think what we need is an overhang 4 long to be stuck in each of these corners. So it's going to be over here as well as over here. The places where it's already empty, I think we need to add a little bit of dirt so we can overhang it off. At the same time, we can start carting in the next round of TNT. This is quite the underground facility we're building. I don't think I've built anything quite as large underground before. While we wait for the next round, let's take another peek at our water. Well, I could see the 2 upper lakes are almost finished, in which case our pumps should turn off. One thing I'm very happy with is the rate of water moving through here. We can see a definite flow of water heading into the vault. In fact, if I peek out over here to where our secondary reserve water is, you can see it's not even filling up at this point, which is great. That means that we are fully absorbing all of the water coming in faster than it can be produced. So if anything, our vault is over-provisioned. Oh, I do see something wrong here, though. They never got over here to finish this guy. It's unfortunate. I would like this water too. If I build a platform here, they should be able to get there. Speaking of other water, we should also be looking at this water over here. I think there is another aquifer over here as well as a water source. We would have to come up with some bad water diversion system for this, but if we could tap into it, we could just dump it down over here with this stuff. In fact, we might even be able to use the diversion system to dump water off over here. That would be pretty good. As a background task, I will set up some work to tear out this stuff then, with the idea that we can eventually dynamite down to the other water source. Low priority. Because right now the most important part is our pumping setup over here. Now, as I take a look, I can see they put in the space on the side. That's good. We can get rid of this, and we're going to go ahead and put those overhangs in here. And if I look at my blueprint that I have set up over here, yes, it should be 4 wide. So this will be the support for our storage. And if I've done the calculations right, yes, we should be able to cleanly support that. That makes me very happy when everything goes as planned. So we can get rid of the supports over here, and then we'll repeat the same process over there. Just makes it easier since we're up here already. I do notice we have a lot of very sad bots working through here. I don't think there's any easy access to this side of the map. We've got the 2-way station over here, but that doesn't do you any good in the tunnel. Well, I do know that I'd like to eventually set up something like this. You can see we've got the power shafts down here, as well as the 2 ways on top. That's going to be our longer term plan down here as well. We don't have a particular need for power, but I'm going to route it anyways. You never know when we might need it in the future. Now for this segment, I don't want to destroy anything yet, so we'll just run power under the first segment down here, and we'll run 2 ways on the top. Doesn't help us out a ton for now. Let's see, what can we do temporarily for this construction? How about this? We can splice over in that direction, and we can make a little segment over here where they can get off. Even if we only build out this little corner, that should help out a bit. New tubeways online, I see them using it, but I'm also seeing a little bit of flooding. I'm guessing what happened is that this got full. So probably all the way up here, I'm gonna guess that our intake valves have probably shut off. So this is off, so this should not be letting anything through, and it looks like this is off as well. I think what happened is we had that flow of water, everything was going great. It turned off and said no more, and then everything just backed up backwards. That's okay, it's just a little bit of flooding on the edges. It should disappear in a second. As for our work in here, well, I can see they're moving on to the second stage. They're starting to build all the overhangs. For this, I bet we could speed it up by pulling in some of those resources. Planks and metal, prioritized by haulers, would be perfect. Then we'll just let them finish up. I'm hopeful that we have enough metal to actually finish this. And oh, what is this? Oh, like this. This looks like more flooding. How are you getting more flooding in here? Everything should have been turned off. Vault doesn't seem to be responsible. I think whatever is going on must be the result of here. Who is letting water in? Well, you should not be letting water in. And you are not letting water in. So who is giving water down here? Seems to be spreading from this direction. But where are you coming from is the big question. Also, temporarily to fix this, I'm going to set this to an or condition. This should say pump the river even though we're full up top. And that's going to cause it to overflow. If I turn that on, you can see the arrow up is okay. And we're going to temporarily drain this, just to get rid of the flooding for the moment. That should hoover up a bunch of this water for us. And we've managed to just push the flooding up top, which came back down into the valley, which is a very power-hungry way of just moving our water in a circle. Well, that's okay. At least some of the water is draining off over here, so it'll get rid of it. I'm still really curious where the source of the flooding came from, though, because as far as I can tell, these are not letting water out anymore. Oh, you know what it is? I understand now. It's these guys. These drills. Because they're going to continue producing water no matter what. Yeah, I think what I need to do is pause these guys when the vault doesn't have space. So as long as there's space in the vault, they'll keep pumping, the vault will keep absorbing stuff, and eventually, once the vault is full, everything just kind of shuts down. Hey, we don't have anywhere else for this water to go, and we don't want to keep pumping it so it goes off the map. All right, crisis averted, flooding over. We can get back to what we're doing over here with our new pumping station. Everything looks configured. We'll just continue and finish the last run of TNT. And then I think all we need to do now is, well, we need to continue our trench here for where the pumps are going to get water. Now we should have a nice clean space to work with. So before we start filling this in with things, why don't we take a look with our first person mod again? How does this actually look? Quite nice. We've got our water there. We got space ready for our second row of pumps, a nice arched ceiling, and even access over here to additional tunnel. I think this is where a giant bomb went off. In fact, we can still see up to the surface in that little corner. Yeah, we've got lots of space to expand. Outside of the pumping station, we could break through this wall, and I think we could just have rows and rows of storage on either side. That's pretty good. If I look down here, I can see access to the water, and then this is the tube-way station. We're going to run that tube-way station right in here for easy access to both the supply as well as the pumping work. With all that set up then, the next step is to actually build the pumping array so we can clear up all that space in the downtown district. I'm going to start with the tube-way stations at the front just so I can gauge how much space that I need for them and just start filling everything in. We should also have a manual backup way to get up to the second floor so we can start building that too. Now this is quite the elaborate construction, but for a change I'm going to be kind to my build queue and give them some time to build this. We'll enjoy a short time lapse and see everything built up. And our pumping facility should be operational. That looks quite nice. At the moment, nobody is pumping. That's because I've copied the settings over from these pumps, which cause them only to pump during the good season, with the idea that we've got enough stored. So to start, let's go ahead and start emptying these. I want to start making room downtown. And while our bots cart over all those supplies, let's go take a tour of our new facilities. So here we go through the main entrance. This was the old cave with all the ruins. And we've got a very, very crowded pumping facility. It's very different from the big cave that we saw here originally. There they are, carting in the water to our storage. But I also did add a little spiral staircase up here, and that should get us to the second story and give us a nice view of this pumping array. Not too bad. This is going to significantly increase the rate at which we're pumping. And I think in the future, I might also switch these pumps over to use bots. That way, during the good season, we can get as much water as we can. Now, what I'm really hoping is that all these pumps don't actually empty this water faster than it can fill in. But I'm pretty confident it will be okay, given it's too deep. We could always make it 3 deep if that ends up being a problem later. The next thing that I would look at expanding this is starting to push into the walls here. That way we could just add so many large tanks. This will disrupt those charging stations, but as long as we built up something here, I think we could puncture into the next room and in the background start making space. And we're going to do that on both sides here. Oh, and I'm just noticing, did I mess this up? Do I have these not aligned? Oh, I don't like that. That bothers me. Luckily, these aren't filled in yet. I'm just going to shift them over so everything matches. I'm not sure how I missed that when I was building, but with that rearranged, I can go ahead and start breaking through the wall over here too. These are going to be new chambers. I don't want to risk breaking the arch up here anymore, but these chambers are going to extend to the left and to the right, and they're just going to hold rows and rows of large tanks. That will be for a future episode though, because as I look at our plank supply, we used most of our planks just to build these. So I want to build a buffer up again before I start heading out on that crusade. Instead, I'm going to give them a little bit of time to drain all of these tanks. And with that, we should be able to just tear this stuff out. Something I might do in the near future, though, is move a tank somewhere close to the homes. I don't know what that's going to look like fully, though, because we are probably going to move those homes around pretty quickly, too. Our two-ways remain a pretty big mess right now, but don't worry, there is a reckoning coming for that. Eventually, all the two-ways that we have on the surface down in the basin are going to be moved down into the river, and we'll just have auxiliary lines coming out of the river when we need people to get out. We'll first get all those valuable planks put back into our storage so we can use them somewhere else. Then we're going to start a serious cleanup campaign. For most of this game, we've had all these jagged pockets of water everywhere. It's time to finally clean them up. We can also start straightening out the center of the map so it looks a little bit more symmetrical. We can also use this time to clean up the 2 ponds over here connecting these drills. And altogether, I think that gives us at least half of the basin all terraformed at this point. Now, I still do need to figure out the final form of this, which is why I haven't filled this in with dirt. And I think over here, this is what we're going to be concentrating on next episode. As you can see, this line of the river is going to cut right through, and we're going to have to figure out a place to put all these things. I figure our residential district, well, it might be spread out in a ring around here. That might look interesting if I can make multiple tiered housing in there, so it's not too square. And as for this is all our storage. Our storage, I think, might be interesting to bury into the cave. I'm liking this idea that the Thornbreakers are very secretive. They're hiding all their good stuff inside. They look like this nice, peaceful, easy village, but then they have industrial storage. So this side of the cave wall right here, you can see here, it had some sort of storage in here. This might be cool to take over and move all our storage in there, and that would leave room for us to continue the river. Then maybe we could even build our industry into the cave wall here. That might be one play, or we could just start using all this giant space we've got on the surface. Haven't quite decided yet. And taking a peek, I do see we are starting to stockpile a lot of water, and we even made some progress upstairs. So this is great. This plays into my long-term plan up here, because ultimately I do want to have a lot of water in storage. And that's going to be our ticket to terraforming more and more of the map. Because water is so rare and difficult to stockpile on this map, I think we're going to be relying on a lot of fluid dumps like this one, spread throughout the surface to get it green again. Combined with 2 ways for access deep into the wilderness, I think that's going to be one of our most efficient ways to get a lot of stuff terraformed. But with that, I think I'm going to call this episode. I still have a lot of interesting building to look forward to. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed these episodes, and I hope to catch you next time. Take care.